You're listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set out to bring you news, interesting topics, and interviews with people mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode 524. I'm your host, András Pinter, and joining me for the show is my co-host, Pontus Böckman. See ya!
Hey son, are you active and awesome, András?
Active and awesome.
Yes.
I'm not sure about awesome. I'm kind of hyperactive. So
okay, good.
I'm trying to juggle with many things at a time. So it's really about juggling.
I know the feeling.
But Oh, I have to tell you something.
Yeah.
My trip to Taiwan is cancelled.
Yes.
For next week.
Yes.
For obvious reasons. However, I'll be sent to Turkey.
To Turkey?
Sorry, Turkey.
Turkey. Okay.
Turkey.
Yeah, okay. Say hello to Erdogan.
I will if I see him. But the funny thing about that, and please, dear listeners, don't tell anyone, the only place I've been to in Turkey is Istanbul for a couple of hours of a sightseeing tour when we had a very long layover. And that's about it. And I will be doing an 11-day tour. So, forget about me for those 11 days.
Well,
I'm not going to be able to do anything about the
You'll
podcast.
make something up like you always do. I've been to Istanbul once and I was very nearly mugged. We were, a couple of us were, this was a business trip, blah, blah, blah. We had a conference and blah, blah. And then we were four or five of us. We were out on the streets at night and it was getting late. And we were happy. We had a few beers. This was great. We had done the conference. Everything was nice. And then somebody said, you should come down here to this club we have. Okay, let's go to the club. And then we went through and then to a back street. And then it became darker and darker. And then we were supposed to go down into a basement. And then one guy, not me, I'm ashamed to say, one guy suddenly said, Hey, we are not going down there. We are not going down there. They are not going to treat us well down there. And I got it when he said it the first time. So, okay. No, you're right. Let's go. And then we ran like hell. And it's probably common nowadays as well. But at the time, we heard a lot of stories of people. They lured you down into some sort of place. And then they forced you to pay a lot of, like €1,000 just to be able to leave. Because they sort of, So anyway, so that's probably what would have happened to us. Don't do that. Don't follow strange people down into basements.
I won't, I promise.
Good.
And it will be, the whole thing will be pre-organized and we will have a local tour guide accompanying us all the way.
So if there are robbers, they will be pre-booked and you will know them by sight.
Yes, exactly. So that's going to be part of the tour. Yeah. But I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to be preparing for something that I haven't even seen before.
Wow.
And I know that I will pull it off. It's just... I'm the skeptical guy, so I don't want to bullshit people. So it's a hell of a lot of work to try to build something up. Yes, it is. Actually, it does hinder your success occasionally. But never mind. I'll manage. It's just very, very frustrating. So you probably have to do without me
next week.
Next week, the week after.
Week after next. Okay.
Yeah, the tour starts on Saturday.
On Saturday.
Before Easter. Yeah.
All right.
Anyhow, there are a couple of other things that should be mentioned before we go into everything else. And I'd like to start with a quick shout out to Sense About Science. You know, I'm basically in love with that organization.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned them for a while, so...
Yes, and if you're a regular listener, you know that about me. We are all about evidence, transparency, and calling out the nonsense, but Sense About Science is the gold standard for doing exactly that in the public eye. It's a British charitable organization. They have a lot of amazing campaigns, including the Ask for Evidence campaign, Evidence Week in the UK Parliament, which is amazing. They are the frontline defenders of the scientific method in public life. And guess what? They're looking for a new communications officer to join their small, high-impact team.
Have you applied?
Oh, no. You know why not?
No.
I would have, but I don't have a permission to work in the UK.
Maybe you can work from home.
So I'm not eligible. No, unfortunately, that's a requirement. So if you are from the UK or allowed to work in the UK, and if you're a digital savvy skeptic with a talent for storytelling, this is your dream job. You'll be managing their social presence, creating eye-catching content across everything from Blue Sky to Instagram, and helping shape the voice of an organization that actually makes a difference in policy and public debate as well. So enthusiastic about evidence and transparency? Check. Creative with audiovisual content and social strategy? If that's check too, then go ahead. It's right at the heart of the action if you're working with them and turning complex research into a public fingerprint that people can actually trust. That is
great.
So amazing. So,
link in the show notes for anybody who wants to apply.
Exactly, and don't wait. Shortlisted candidates will be notified by the 17th of April with interviews starting the following week. So you have very limited time, so do apply as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. You can head over to senseaboutscience.org/vacancies, but of course, as you mentioned, it will be on the show notes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there is an event also in April. There is a French event I'd like to mention here briefly. But the funny thing is that I haven't heard about this before. I don't know if you have. That is Rencontre de l'Esprit Critique, which is abbreviated as REC and translates as Critical Thinking Encounters.
Uh-huh.
Are you familiar with that one?
I can see the show notes here, and I see that it's in Toulouse.
It's in Toulouse,
So I think I may have heard the AFIS people talk about it, but I don't know the details.
Actually, it's their website where I came across it.
Okay.
But it really sounds cool. It's Critical Thinking Encounters is in the title. So it's one of the major festivals in Europe, apparently, dedicated to promoting critical thinking and scientific reasoning. As you mentioned, it will be held in Toulouse. It's in France between the 25th and 26th of April this year. So the program combines talks, debates, workshops, performances designed to engage both adults and children. And it was founded in 2021 in response to rising misinformation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Uh-huh. And it has grown into one of the country's most accessible public forums for evidence-based inquiry. So this year's edition features contributors such as psychologist Franck Ramu, whom we have come across at European Skeptics Congresses, right? An illusionist named Jan Frisch, and science communicator Clément Fraisse, alongside interactive sessions addressing topics like fake news, conspiracy theories, and pseudoscience. Really cool stuff. And the program this year places a particular emphasis on the relationship between art and critical thinking, exploring how perception, illusion, and cognitive bias shapes human understanding. There are live demonstrations, theatrical performances, and hands-on activities. The festival aims to provide practical tools for evaluating extraordinary claims and navigating complex information environments. So it's really cool that it's like a step in. It's a gateway to navigating through complex information, science-related information, that you're evaluating extraordinary claims as well. Organizers highlight that inclusivity is a core principle here, with free entry, which is amazing in and of itself. Family-friendly programming, so accessibility measures include sign language interpretation and childcare as well, and child-friendly programs. However, it is all in French, so
yes,
I don't know what it means in terms of inclusivity. So,
well, if you know French,
of a selection there.
Yes, I'm sure you should. I mean, if you know French and you listen to this show, you should go there. I can tell. Because what have you got to lose?
To lose? Oh, boom. Okay, that was great. I would love to go. Unfortunately, my French is a little rusty. I try occasionally, but I wouldn't even dare try in French environment. In Canada, that's fine. They're very nice about it. In my experience, in Paris at least, that's where I had this experience. I tried and I got humiliated. For failing. So that doesn't happen in Canada. In my experience, in 16 years of doing tours to Canada, I couldn't practice enough of French so that I can speak. And the reason for that is that French Canadians are just too nice. I mean, the stereotypical Canadian attitude is that they realize that your French is not very strong, So they tend to switch to English.
Yeah. So
And,
they apologize because
yes,
you are
exactly.
not good in French.
But I want to because it's such a beautiful
Yeah.
language. All right. I think I had everything out of my system for the beginning of the show. So we
good,
can do the actual
Let's start the
segmented
show, shall
parts
we?
of the show. Okay, let's do that. And of course, the first part of our show is usually TWISH, This Week in Skeptical History. And this week, we are commemorating someone whose birthday is on the 24th of March. He was one of the most fascinating figures in the history of skepticism. He was a man who mastered illusion and turned that mastery against those who claimed that their similar performances were the real thing. He was born on the 24th of March, 1874 in Budapest, and his life bridges continents, cultures, and a fundamental divide between belief and evidence. So he's our real skeptical hero, and his name was Harry Houdini. I know that we have already featured him on TWISH, but it was for the date of his death, and the focus was on mostly the way he died as well, but this is not our focus this time. So, Houdini entered the world as Erik Weisz, the son of Rabbi Meyer Weisz in what was then the Austro-Hungarian Empire. His family emigrated to the United States during his childhood, and his family had to endure a lot of instability and reinvention of their whole lives. So poverty was a constant companion, but so was resilience. So that might have had something to do with what he chose to be his path later. Before he became Houdini, the big Houdini, he was already performing, famously as Erich, Prince of the Air, a trapeze artist at just 9 years of age.
Wow.
So it was quite an athletic young man. And like many performers, he kind of built himself from the ground up. He adopted the name Harry Houdini, inspired by the French magician Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin. Houdin, sorry, because the H is not pronounced, obviously. But I'm pretty sure that I butchered this name regardless. But Houdin was a figure he initially admired, but later critically dismantled in his book, The Unmasking of Robert Houdin. That kind of arc from admiration to critical reassessment would basically define Houdini's whole intellectual life and also his stage career. So he rose to global fame not as a conventional magician, which he was because he was well trained as a magician, but as an escapologist. His acts were framed as a near superhuman feats. We're talking stuff ranging from breaking free from handcuffs, which is relatively easy. I saw that happen with ropes with Randy, for example. I did tie that rope very, very tightly, and he could still escape. Never mind. Houdini did that too, but he did straitjackets, but all the way up to things like locked crates to even submerged torture cells. So he was crazy that way. And what was crucial about all that is that he never attributed any of that to anything supernatural. For Houdini, these performances were demonstration of discipline, preparation, and technical skill. And as he put it, my mind is the key that sets me free. So that was the first part of his life. But the second half of his life is what cements his place in skeptical history. So in the early 20th century, we mentioned that on several occasions that at that time, spiritualism in Europe was, but not only in Europe, in North America as well, spiritualism was booming. Seances, spirit photography, and claims of communication with the dead really captivated audiences on both sides of the Atlantic. And even highly educated individuals were convinced. Among them was Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, champion of rational deduction, but nonetheless a believer in the paranormal. I mean, Arthur Conan Doyle himself. Houdini, however, saw something significantly different from what Conan Doyle did. He saw exploitation in this whole realm of spiritism. And after the death of his beloved mother, for a little while he personally investigated mediums, initially hoping that their claims might be true. But what he found through rigorous testing and investigations was what he described as a goal-like industry, preying on grief. they are what the late Mark Edward called the grief vampires, right? Yeah. And using his intimate knowledge of illusion, Houdini began systematically exposing fraudulent techniques, like spirit wrapping, produced by subtle joint movements or hidden mechanisms, and ectoplasm that turned out to be little more than swallowed and regurgitated cheesecloth. And these are only a few of what he demonstrated to be fraudulent. But he didn't stop at demonstrations. Houdini took his campaign into the public and institutional arena as well. He testified before Congress in support of anti-fraud legislation targeting fortune-telling and mediumship scams. He was very much in the public eye with all that. His investigative work reached a peak through his involvement with Scientific American, which offered a substantial prize to any medium who could demonstrate genuine supernatural abilities under controlled conditions. This is what was the predecessor to the James Randi Educational Foundation's $100,000 and then later $1 million prize.
James Randi was in many ways the successor of Harry Houdini.
The successor of Harry Houdini. And yeah, I think he was fascinated. Now, I know for a fact that he was fascinated by Houdini's whole life and work, and rightly so. Randi himself really deserved to be called the amazing Randi as well, on his own right. So, of course, when it comes to that substantial prize that I mentioned, no one ever succeeded. But many tried. Houdini played a key role in testing one of the most famous claimants, named Mina Marjorie Crandon, by designing a specially controlled cabinet that prevented her from secretly using her limbs. He exposed her methods and discredited her claims completely. And obviously, this commitment to evidence-based inquiry ultimately cost him friendships, most notably that with Doyle. Arthur Conan Doyle became convinced that Houdini himself possessed supernatural powers, while Houdini insisted repeatedly and rather powerfully that everything he did was the result of skill, not spirit. So it's the complete opposite of what, like, for example, Uri Geller did. He used a trick and he claims that he can do it with these special energies. And this is what Randi called the hard way. So he's doing the hard way if he uses supernatural capabilities, because it can be done just the way he did it. So that's the spirit of the whole thing. But Houdini and Doyle's falling out became emblematic of a broader cultural conflict, the tension between comforting belief and uncomfortable evidence. Even in death, Houdini approached the supernatural as a testable hypothesis. He and his wife, Bess, devised a secret code, which was Rosabelle Believe, that they didn't share with anyone, and that would serve as proof if communication from beyond the grave were possible. And after Houdini's death on Halloween in 1926, Bess held seances for 10 years, waiting for that message, and it never came. So in 1936, she ended the experiment, concluding simply that 10 years is long enough to wait for any man. And Houdini would not show up with that message. So his legacy is not just that of a performer, but of a methodological skeptic. Long before phrases like extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence became standard, he was already applying that principle in practice. He understood that debunking is not about cynicism or spoiling wonder. It is about safeguarding people from deception, especially when they are most vulnerable. And this is why most of the skeptics that we know personally do this whole thing, to try to prevent that from happening. So, from Budapest to the world stage, Houdini's journey reflects more than personal ambition. It is a case study in how expertise, when paired with intellectual honesty, can be used not just to entertain but to illuminate. And on his birthday, we remember him not merely as the king of handcuffs, but as a pioneer of modern skepticism, a man who escaped chains and then helped others escape illusions.
Ooh, very well put.
Yeah, that was him. And to my regret, the Hungarian Skeptic Society could never establish a cooperation with the Houdini House that basically handles everything that is here in Hungary from his heritage, from his inheritance even. So it would be amazing, but they are very business-minded, and obviously we are not. So that's a bit of a difficulty there.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, in Hungary, magicians and astrologists, they are not very active in the skeptical movement. Unlike in the United Kingdom, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, fascinating man, of course, very much so.
Yeah, he was.
And a great inspiration, not just for James Randi, but for many others as well.
I agree. All right, but enough of that. We are moving on to finding out what's been happening across Europe and the world. This is where we talk about the news.
Yes, speaking of the dead, not speaking to the dead, but of the dead, I was at the funeral yesterday. This was my wife's younger brother who died of cancer a couple of weeks ago. Very, very sad, of course. But the reason to bring it up here is, and the reason that it has a skeptical angle, is that nobody knew in the family, at least as far as I can tell, nobody knew that he had chosen, probably years ago, to leave the Swedish church, which has come up now and again. A couple of times over the last few episodes we've talked about this, actually.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And since he was not a member of the Swedish church, the funeral could not be held in such a church. And that became a bit of an issue because he had a long-time partner. They were not living together, but still long-time romantic partner. And she very much wanted to have a traditional church funeral. And apparently she didn't know that was out of the question. And also his parents, so my wife's parents, they are 89, by the way. Quite impressive. They're still doing fine.
Keep it up.
But they wanted a traditional Christian funeral service. Everybody wanted that in the, count me out.
So not even they had known?
No, nobody knew. No. And it wasn't. Yeah, so this is an issue, right? The guy himself is no longer around we couldn't ask him, of course. But apparently he had left the church and we didn't know exactly why. And then we have close relatives and a partner who wants a religious service. So what do you do? So in the end, his parents arranged a service, not in a church, because that was out of the question, couldn't do that, but in a chapel next to the local church. And they actually hired a former priest to officiate the thing. And of course, it became a clearly Christian service after all. And so that's interesting. How would you feel about that? You can't ask the guy. Maybe he left just of financial reasons. He didn't want to pay to the church anymore. We don't know for sure that he was an atheist or wanted to make a statement. Yeah?
Yeah, and the other thing is that if you want a religious service, but you cannot be sure for what reason he had left the church, that's another pickle. I mean,
it's a dilemma. You don't know.
That's another issue that... Okay.
Yeah, but that's not the news item. Interesting as it may be. But that's not why I bring this up. But very much related to this, last week Humanists UK raised concerns at the 61st session of the UN Human Rights Council about, quote, the challenges faced by the non-religious in having their funeral wishes respected, end quote. So very much the same issue, really. And at this session, which takes place this week, there was a paper issued beforehand, but now the session is this week, and I don't know exactly how it's going. But on this session, there will be a report presented called How Freedom of Religion or Belief Relates to Death and Honoring the Deceased, end quote. And it basically charges all states and countries to honor the beliefs of the individual and the next of kin. And what Humanists UK wanted to add to this were specific guidance in two situations. First of all, how should this be adopted in countries where apostasy, being an atheist, is illegal? That is the case in 15 countries, and it is punishable by death in 11 of these countries. Little bit ironic to condemn somebody to death because they are already dead and they want to have a funeral without religion. But okay. But of course, it concerns people around the person as well, of course. The second thing that the humanists wanted to have guidance on is the issue of protecting a minority of beliefs from stigma and persecution. you need to protect the family and community who carries out a secular funeral service if it goes against the majority beliefs in that particular country. So these are important questions. I don't know if there are any easy answers, but it's good to have them raised. But even the humanists did not bring up my example when the wishes of the deceased may clash with the beliefs of the family and the community around them. And I mean, personally, when I die, I couldn't care less. You can have an all singing, all dancing Hare Krishna event if you want to. I won't be there, people. Spoilers.
Yeah, I remember when my mother died. She hadn't told anyone what she had wanted, even though she would have had enough time to prepare for that.
Yeah.
So the reason why we had her cremated was that many, many years back, she and my dad had been talking about what each other would like to be treated as when they died. But it was many, many years ago. And she wasn't particularly religious, neither were we, either of us. So there were no clashes, but it was still weird in a way that we didn't know for sure what her wish would have been.
Yeah. But my mother, who's still alive, she said this long time ago when my grandfather died, her father died. She said afterwards, I was very young. I was 8 or something, very young. But I remember she said that funerals are not for the person who died. Funerals are for those who were left behind, for us to comfort each other. And maybe that's how you should think about that. But that doesn't help when you're in a society when you have a lot of beliefs that are almost mandatory and when atheism is outlawed. That's a different situation.
Yeah. But a memorial service is always important, and especially and exactly as you say, for the ones who remain.
Yeah,
to give us closure in a way. All right, a much more light-hearted story that I'm bringing next.
Good,
but it's still serious in a way. It's a story that brings the problem of AI hallucinations, something we talk about a lot, out of the lab and directly into the newsroom. So, a senior journalist at the European media group TWISH has been suspended after an internal investigation found that AI-generated quotes had been inserted into published work that went through his hands.
I'm shocked.
Well, it's not very shocking, but it's an interesting example, I think. So the guy that the whole case centers around is named Peter van der Meers. Sorry for my Dutch pronunciation. But he's a prominent former editor-in-chief and a senior figure within the company, TWISH, who admitted to using generative AI tools, that's fine, including ChatGPT, Perplexity, Google's Notebook LM, in order to assist in producing material for his newsletter. But the problem is, these tools didn't just summarize, as his intention was, but they generated plausible but false quotations, which were then presented as if they had been said by real people. When we do this, the quote at the end of the show, it's usually something I go into a meticulous search to find the origin of the quote. So I want to be sure that it was really attributed to that person and that the original source is found.
Why don't you just ask ChatGPT?
No, I have tried that, actually. I have tried asking ChatGPT for ideas, but I never trust ChatGPT. Don't ever do that, especially not with living people, because they might be coming across.
Well, don't do it with the dead either. I mean, always check your sources.
Always do. So the whole issue came to light after readers and sources flagged inconsistencies in the text. An investigation by the Dutch newspaper on NRC, ironically, a publication Van der Meers once led, found that dozens of quotes attributed to public figures were inaccurate. When contacted, multiple sources confirmed they had never made the statements attributed to them. So Van der Meers later acknowledged that he had fallen into the trap of hallucinations, effectively presenting paraphrases, or in some cases entirely fabricated statements, as direct quotes. So TWISH responded by suspending him and launching a broader review. Rightly so, I think. The company reiterated its zero-tolerance policy for fabricated material, emphasizing that all report must meet standards of human verification, transparency, and editorial accountability. Well, duh. That should be a basic requirement. A number of affected articles have since been corrected or even removed, I have to add. Yeah. This highlights a growing fault line in modern journalism, right? AI tools are increasingly used for transcription, summarization, and research. But this incident underscores the risks when those tools are used without rigorous oversight. Fabricated quotes don't just undermine individual stories, they erode trust in the publication as a whole. So just remind ourselves that the reliability of a source still depends on verification, not plausibility, because it can sound plausible that someone said something idiotic as well. So actually, one of the sources did say specifically that. I wouldn't ever say such an idiotic thing. That was, I think. I'm not sure that's an exact quote. But we know that AI can generate convincing language, but it's what it's designed for. But it cannot guarantee truth. And if a quote can't be traced back to a real, verifiable statement, it doesn't belong in quotation marks. Just write it down as an idea or something. And Van der Meers still keeps pushing. He says that he still believes that AI has a role to play in journalism. And I don't doubt that. I'm not against that. But interestingly, for now, his immediate task seems to be reflecting on a very human phenomenon, which is a failure of judgment. So, yeah. Congratulations.
There may be another thing behind this as well, which makes it harder to avoid these things. And that is that journalists are expected to produce more and more material, cheaper and cheaper, faster and faster and faster. And if they can get help by AI, of course, they will turn to that, because any tool that can make their work more efficient is something that they should consider. But also, they don't even have time to check what AI is producing. Now, I shouldn't make excuses for this guy, but I think it's symptomatic of this fact that we expect more and more and more of journalists, and still that they should maintain quality.
Yeah, but oversight is the key here. So obviously, so you can use it. I use it too, especially when it comes to my mind. You probably haven't noticed, but my mind keeps going off track. So it's what the most difficult for me is to keep my thoughts organized, and this is where it comes very handy. It gives me not only for this podcast but for talks, for example. I want an outline of the storyline, the
you need a structure
arc of the story, a structure, and then on that structure I can build my own stuff. But I need that structure, and through that I've actually learned a lot. So my thoughts have developed a kind of a structure that they hadn't been there before. So I find it very useful. But oh god, you have to be in control of the content, because it can really go off track very easily.
Yes, all right. Let's talk about science, research. So 14 months into the Trump 2.0 administration, we can now start to summarize the effects of his anti-science policies. Well, arguably, it's been visible long before this, but we have more results now, more tangible results. Many European countries, including but not limited to France, Germany, Austria, and others, they have successfully reached out to US scientists who no longer feel at home in the US. Or maybe they feel at home, but they can't find funding there. So one example is the French University Aix-Marseille, or the AMU, the AMU. They launched a project and a website already in March 2025, so a year ago, and they call that program Safe Place for Science. And on their website, I read, quote, In a context where some scientists in the United States may feel threatened or hindered in their research, our university is announcing the launch of the Safe Place for Science program, dedicated to welcoming scientists wishing to pursue their work in an environment conducive to innovation, excellence, and academic freedom. End quote.
Great.
Nice words, all of them. Less than a month after they had launched this website, and within the deadline, they had received 300 applications, and another 600 applications arrived after the deadline. So apparently interest was very high already then. Then in May 2025, the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen, announced this.
She's all over Hungary now. All over the big,
she's Brussels.
Massive posters. Yeah, she's Brussels. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Sorry for the interruption, but I have to push this in.
Yes. But anyway, she announced the launch of the Choose Europe for Science program with funding of approximately 500 million euros to attract American candidates. And apart from universities in France and the European Commission, 9 other European countries have developed similar initiatives. The German federal government also created the Global Minds Initiative Germany and the Meitner-Einstein program, while the German Max Planck Society presented the Max Planck Transatlantic program. So all examples of the same kind of initiatives. The number of residence permits granted to US citizens in Germany increased by 32% between the period January to September between 2024 and 2025. And this is largely attributed to researchers. In Austria, there was a similar initiative with the same goal to attract US researchers. So, Donald, maybe attacking US universities wasn't such a good idea if you want to keep your country in the forefront of science. And there is another development, perhaps more symbolic, but still very fun in a way. We all know the name Mark Abrams, right? Andras, does it ring a bell?
Yes, it does, but I'm
you
not
will
sure.
know. You will know as
how.
soon as I tell you. He's the guy behind the Ig Nobel prizes.
Oh yes, that's how.
yeah. So they reward the most surprising research of the year with the support of actual Nobel laureates. It's very entertaining, of course, and we have often mentioned the outcome of these prizes here on the show. These awards, according to their founder, first will make you laugh and then think. And some of the winning research that has been presented are like painting cows to look like zebras to see if that repelled flies. It did, actually. They have investigated fondness of certain lizards for 4-cheese pizza and the fact that alcohol helps with speaking languages.
And we know that from experience, actually.
Well, it's good to have it scientifically researched. You shouldn't go by anecdote.
Yeah, well, of course not. Of course not.
So these very prestigious awards for 35 years have always been presented in Massachusetts, first at Harvard and then at MIT. But now, as a direct consequence of the attacks against science by Trump, Abrams have announced that the award ceremony will move to Europe. And the reason is as crazy as it is tragic. Abrams has this to say, and this is a real quote. During the past year, it has become unsafe for our guests to visit the country. We cannot in good conscience ask the new winners or the international journalists who cover the event to travel to the US this year. End quote. That's how bad he feels that it is. So instead, in 2026, the ceremony will be held in Zurich in Switzerland. And then the plan is that it will move from country to country within Europe, a little bit like Eurovision, according to Abrams. Or maybe a little bit as the European Skeptics Congress. Yeah. I wonder why I didn't pick that example. So their loss is our gain, right? So the Ig Nobel ceremonies from now on will be in Europe, at least as long as Trump is in charge. And so this is what's happening, Donny boy. If you are more interested in starting World War III than supporting science, then we in Europe will take over, at least the science.
And wow, that is really good and uplifting to see. But you know what? Thanks to the idiot-in-chief of the United States, we can have rising fuel prices all over the world as well. But definitely in Europe. Now, in Germany, this has once again sparked a wave of misleading consumer revolt claims that are propagated through viral chain messages, ranging from calling for boycotts to selling so-called quantum fuel-saving gadgets.
Oh,
but
I want
scrutiny. Oh yeah, me too. Especially that I'm driving electric. So
I'm sure they have those as well.
Yeah, they do. But scrutiny from experts and fact-checkers shows that neither the boycotts nor the fuel-saving gadgets hold up. A widely shared message urges drivers to boycott major petrol brands like Shell and Aral, claiming that a coordinated few days of avoidance would force prices down. However, as noted by Bernd Harder at Skeptics, this claim has circulated in various forms since at least 1999, and it misunderstands basic market dynamics.
No.
So, fuel prices are driven largely by taxes and global oil markets and distribution costs, not by the narrow margins of individual stations. Any boycott would simply shift demand elsewhere, leaving overall prices unchanged completely. Plus, if you decide not to do that, not to fuel your car, adjusting to the market needs, they will, after a while, store a lesser amount of fuel at a certain station. So that means they're going to be running out of fuel much easier. So you can end up not being able to fill up your tank. So that's a very stupid thing to do. But fact-checking organizations such as Mimikama classify these messages as classic chain letter hoaxes. No verifiable origin, but a very strong emotional appeal and a call to forward them. This is how idiocy is propagated. At the same time, these dubious fuel-saving devices are gaining traction online as well. These include OBD2 dongles and quantum gadgets. Quantum gadgets, everything is called quantum if you want to scientific, right? And these claim to improve efficiency through some kind of vague scientific sounding mechanisms like quote unquote molecular alignment of the fuel that it's applied to. And the claims are completely nonsensical. Some organizations tested these claims, and there is a report coming from Der Spiegel that shows that they deliver no measurable benefit whatsoever, often containing little more than a blinking LED. And that is what you get for your money. So just keep in mind, neither viral activism nor pseudo-technical shortcuts can meaningfully affect fuel prices or consumption. While these ideas may offer a sense of control, they fail to alter the underlying economics and eventually leads to conning people out of their money, something that we are seeing a scarcity of anyway. I mean, money, thanks to our incompetent Neanderthals leading our countries. So this is the new trend in Germany, according to skeptics. But with that, we are finishing our news round, which means we are about to find out who's been really wrong lately.
All right, so reaching net zero emissions is discussed in many countries these days, especially in Europe. The narrative that you often see in the media is that the general public more and more think that this is a bad idea because people are contrarians and they think it's been overblown and climate change is not really as bad as they want you to think. But according to an analysis made by Institute for Public Policy Research, IPPR, and Persuasion UK, this is largely a myth, at least in the UK. The analysis found that media coverage of net zero is more than twice as likely to be negative than public attitudes actually are. And this is driving a false perception that net zero policies are unpopular with the voters. So this in turn has led to a situation where MPs, so members of parliament, not military police, members of parliament significantly underestimate public support for climate policies, and they overestimate public opposition to local clean energy infrastructure projects. But a spokesperson for IPPR says that this is a political myth. Instead, it is politicians within Reform UK, put a pin in that, and the Conservative Party that have constructed this false narrative, and they are using the same tactics as during Brexit. The Conservative forces are driving this agenda of being against net zero emissions under the idea that this is what people want. So they create this false narrative, basically. So if you look at actual polling, this shows that 40% of voters in the UK remain strongly behind net zero policies, and that's almost double the 24% who are opposed to it. Media coverage of net zero, on the other hand, as I said, is more than twice as likely to be negative than public attitudes actually are. So, for promoting the disinformation that the public is against net zero policies when it's actually the other way around, Reform UK and the Conservative Party received this week's award for being really wrong.
Again, well deserved. Thank you very much, Pontus. It was good to see some of the latest polls showing a drop in support for Reform UK. Yeah. Let's make it a trend, shall we?
Yes.
That would be a good idea, I think, for all of us.
Yes. Just to make clear, we are not intentionally favoring certain parties, but certain parties certainly are less scientific than others, and we are against any unscientific...
And you are putting it very mildly,
yeah,
actually.
well, okay. I just want to make
when
sure
it comes
that
to...
we don't...
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, we're not for any specific party, but we are against idiocy. So that's what we are trying to convey here. All right. Thank you very much for that, Pontus. And that brings us to the last part of this week's episode, which is, as usual, a quote. And the quote comes from a German experimental physicist who was the first ever person to receive the Nobel Prize in physics, and that was Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen.
I'm surprised his last name wasn't X-ray.
X marks the spot. Okay, so what Röntgen said was the following. I am not a prophet, and I am opposed to prophesying. I'm pursuing my investigations, and as fast as my results are verified, I shall make them public.
Very good. Very good. I approve.
Yes.
I approve.
Not before verification, please.
Yes, and I'm sure that you have checked this quote several times to make sure that it is really him who said that.
Yes, it was. Yes,
okay,
yes. I found it in several sources, and those were not internet memes that I found it on. So
well done. I'll give you a little gold star for that.
Oh, nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. It means a lot. Okay, so that brings us to the real conclusion of this week's episode. So thank you very much again, Pontus.
Thanks a lot.
Many, many thanks to our listeners as well for tuning in. Please keep doing so. And until next week, goodbye.
Hej då.
Veislat. This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@TheESP.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu. Follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social. Like us on Facebook or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
Yeah, well, I'll give you the verdict later on. No, that's
Okay,
probably
thank you.
fine.
Thank you. I appreciate
That's
that.
probably fine. What the hell? Who cares?
Just a second.
What?
I have contradicting pieces of information here.
Oops.
I have to double check that.
Again, that's the handicap with skeptical people. They can't just bullshit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about science, research.
Let's talk about science.
It could be a song. Could be a song. But let's take that offline.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's broke.